available to watch afterwards. An overview about the project itself before I hand over to Catherine. So, as I said before, it's the BioCultural Heritage Tourism Project, or BCHT, as we call it. It's a 3-year Interreg EU funded project. It started in September 2018 and it will finish in December this year. The partners that are involved, there's four Biosphere Partners involved. So us in the Living Coast, in Brighton and Lewis Downs Biosphere. North Devon is the other UK partner. And then we've got 2 partners in France, which are, again, 2 biosphere reserves, the Marais de Maurois and the Iroise Islands, which are just off the coast of Brittany. Our other partners are University of Exeter, and we've got Stefan here today from University of Exeter with us, and also Pas de Calais Tourism as well. So the project itself and the sort of the BCHT concept is all about celebrating the natural and cultural heritage of our area and kind of bringing it to the forefront of our visitors' minds, but also ensuring it's promoted in a sustainable way. So this covers quite a wide range of things, like learning about local produce or traditional skills. So anything from like building with flint or smoking fish or foraging, or but it's also about connecting people with nature and our natural environment. So learning about local wildlife, it could be alongside sort of an active or a sport focus, so exploring and learning about the area through cycling or walking or paddleboarding. But it also has a wellbeing focus as well, so using the environment and the natural world to support this. So we've got 3 main outputs of the project. Conserving our natural sites, which is, so we're building a strategic tool to manage the flow of visitors and reduce their impact at sensitive sites. We're also involving tourism businesses. So we managed to hold a networking event this time last year before lockdown, and the plan was to hold a series of these events, but unfortunately COVID stopped that. This event is obviously now happening, which is great, but it's more about just events. It's about kind of being inspired by the BCHT concept and sort of wanting to incorporate it in what you do. So hopefully this webinar today will give you a bit of a flavour about what it's all about, and we'll also be developing some actual tools that you can use in your marketing as well. We'll also be developing and promoting new activities. So this project is very much about what visitors experience themselves, about the local environment and the culture and the heritage. So we're also developing experience to go alongside this. So that's about it from me for the actual project. I just wanted to give you a very brief overview because I wanted to let Catherine have sort of maximum time to sort of talk about her things. I do tend to update people on the project itself through the Visit Brighton network and emails. So if you're not part of that network, then please do take my email address down and feel free to contact me direct, and I'm more than happy to sort of involve you in that. I now want to introduce Dr. Catherine Kelly, who's an expert in all manner of things, actually. She's a senior lecturer in tourism at the University of Greenwich, but she's also a wellbeing practitioner. So please do use the chat function to ask any questions, and there will be some time at the end for Catherine to answer them. So I'm going to hand over to Catherine now.
Bear with me for a second. Now, can you see that from the first screen, Lynn? Just let me know. Yep, great. And everyone can hear me? Yep, great. Thank you so much. I'm going to have to minimize you guys for a second. Okay, so thanks so much for asking me along today, Lynn and the Biosphere. My name is Catherine Kelly. Some of you probably know me already from various different things around Brighton. I work at the University of Greenwich in London, but I live here in Hove. And I've been part of the Biosphere setup really since it started, or fairly soon after it started. So I sit on the member of that. I used to chair the Sustainable Development Subcommittee of that came up with this lovely name, the Living Coast, even though all the meetings to get us to that name nearly killed me. And yeah, I write about well-being and nature, and particularly water, as part of my academic job, but I also have just written a book for the public as well on blue spaces. So, and I'm a practitioner, so I run Blue School work for children in education and other sort of well-being practices. I'll say a bit more about that later. So when Lynn asked me would I speak to the businesses in the biosphere, I thought, well, I'm not really a business expert, so this is not going to be a marketing talk. As Lynn said, she is going to work on a marketing toolkit for all of you who are interested in that side of things. What I wanted to do today really was just talk about why blue space, water and well-being really matters to people, so that you have an opportunity then to bring it into your own work in whatever context you want to. Some of you will already be really doing that, and some of you may have thought about it. So this is just an outline of what I want to say, a little bit about what blue space is, introduce some of the kind of concepts and theories around it, just so that you know that it is a thing. We all know probably that we love the sea, but what is it about it, and what can we learn from some of the research so that we might be able to use it. I look at some examples from other places, and I want to really kind of, because this is a biosphere as well, I want to give out this message about sustainability and custodianship today as well, that this is a resource that we all need to look after, and kind of to think about finally about how COVID has changed our relationship with nature, and maybe the increased importance that it now has. So that's it. I was part of, some of you may have seen it, a lovely little film that Lynn commissioned for the Biosphere recently, showing the different aspects of the coast. And I shared that on my social media. And one of the things that really struck me in everybody's responses was how proud people were to be living here. And they loved the name, the Living Coast. A lot of them didn't know that we were in a biosphere, but the overwhelming sense of response to that little film was a sense of being lucky to live by the sea, and a sense of pride in being from here and living or working here. And I just thought that was lovely. So let's think about where that comes from a little bit. So what do we mean by blue spaces? Well, blue spaces literally means all the surface waters that we can refer to in nature: oceans, seas, lakes, rivers, waterfalls, streams. All of that is understood to mean blue space, or blue spaces if you want to pluralize it. I kind of like the singular, but my editors wanted me to pluralize it. So it's something that's really important, I think, this human need for water. And when we're thinking about or talking about blue spaces, we can think about all the different qualities it has, you know, its color, its clarity, its motion, where it is, how we use it ourselves, and how other people might use it. So those are all really kind of basic things that we can think about, and it might be something that you've thought about yourselves. I went down for a walk very early this morning, and the sea was beautiful. The sun was shining on it, the water was really clear. So automatically our senses are engaged with noticing how water is and how we are when we're next to it. Okay, so there's 4 categories we can refer to about maybe how we classify or how we engage with water. And your business or your work might be involved in some of these or all of these, or you might want to think about how you get into them. And I'll show some photographs of these in a minute. So kinetic recreation experiences, which involve motion on water, situation-based, harvest, and contemplative or aesthetic experiences. So these are different ways into blue space, if you like. And all the research is showing us, which I'll come back to again in a minute as well, is this relationship between health, well-being, tourism, landscapes. Okay, so these are the 4 categories that I was mentioning. The first one here is on the top left, is a situation-based blue space. And you can see the person there sitting on their rock. And I just wonder if any of you listening have a favorite rock or a favorite bay or a favorite place near water that you are attached to. Maybe somewhere that you go on holiday, and when you get there, you know that you're now on holiday because you're sitting in your favorite spot. Okay, and that's something that we can really think about in terms of how we engage with blue space. The top right photograph is the sort of contemplative notion of just going to look at water. So blue space well-being you don't have to get into the water. I personally, and many people I know, love to get into it every day, all year. But even looking at it and watching it and contemplating and generating this sense of perspective or awe is something that is really beneficial. And the bottom left photograph is this kinetic meaning movement. So for a lot of people, their well-being comes from being active on water or in water. So it could be swimming, but it could also be kayaking, stand-up paddleboarding, windsurfing, bodyboarding, and all the different things that we can do on water, sailing maybe. Okay. And then finally, is this photograph of a fisherman, which is a harvest experience. So going to catch something, and it might also be collecting things from the shoreline as well, depending on where you live in the country. Okay, so I'm not going to get too academic. I was really struggling with the tone for this presentation, actually. But all I will say, and this is a useful thing, is that, you know, space and our perceptions of nature and natural space is something that we call socially constructed. In other words, it depends on who we are. And how we engage with blue space or nature depends on who we are, what we know, maybe what we were brought up to do. And therefore, this affects how we think about it and how we think the space should be used. And I know this, so this is interesting to understand, because often, I don't know, I certainly, and plenty of people I know, when we're sea swimming and we see jet skis flying past us, we get really upset. People I know, because we think, oh gosh, the noise, the pollution, the engagement with wildlife and so on is upsetting. But for other people who don't have the same background, that's a really fun thing to do on the water. So trying to step outside of our own shoes, our own social constructions of how we understand blue space in nature, I think is really important. And it's something that we need to think about as well if we are to develop businesses that use natural resources, is thinking about our different audiences and different markets, and this idea of wanting and needing and understanding things differently. So yeah. So this is my first interactive question, so that you guys are not all going to go to sleep listening to me. Here's a question for you, and I want you to type some replies into the chat box, please. And I want you to say how important blue space and or nature is in your business or your service or your organization. So very important, average importance, it's just a backdrop, or it's not really important at the moment. And if you don't mind just putting in brackets what your business is, so you don't have to, you can name it, or you can say, you know, whatever, hotel, restaurant, etc. If you could do that for a minute, please, that would be awesome. I'm really interested to hear your views on this, and we kind of want to capture knowledge about where we're at with this in the biosphere as well. So maybe just take a minute or two to do that, please. I feel like I'm in a tutorial now. Great. Great. That's great. Lovely. I'm really interested to see what businesses and what organizations we have here and how you're ranking this. Okay. Biosphere Trust, average importance, publisher, fairly important. Distillery, so you want to bring it into your story, that's interesting. Sustainability coach. Okay, and then we have some with nature and some with the sea. And that's interesting as well about even things like wedding venues, because we use the sea, don't we, as our background. I'm going to take questions at the end of my presentation, but for now, I'm just really pleased to see some replies on that so that we can get a sense of where you're at with this. Now, for some reason, my slide is not going forward. Why would that be? I seem to have frozen. Stefan or anybody else there? Any idea why that might be? Because I went into chat, maybe.
Yes, that's my guess.
Do I have to leave chat? I'm afraid if I do leave down here, I'm going to leave the whole thing.
Maybe click back to your presentation and see whether that gets things moving.
Sorry about this, everybody. Gotta love technology. I've got a little drop-down menu, Stefan, that says chat, recording, all of those things, and then it says leave at the bottom. I do leave. I'm worried I'm going to leave everyone and everything.
Yeah, don't leave.
Back to your presentation. There's a little arrow backwards and forwards in the bottom left-hand corner.
Yeah. All right. There we are. Let's come back again. That disappeared on me. I've got drop-down menus everywhere. Okay, so excuse me for a second. Let's just have a look at some of this research and kind of background to blue space, nature and well-being. Now, there's a really long-standing context for the notion of nature as healer, and researchers like Ulrich, that some of you might be familiar with, spoke about just the benefits of being near a natural view. That was kind of the first seminal piece of work on that. And there's a lot more evidence-based research coming out now that is tripping into other disciplines. So it started off being kind of public health, and it moved into psychology, eco-psychology in particular, geography, and now tourism as well, to try and capture, you know, some of the background to why people want these experiences and increasingly why they make us feel well. Okay. And most of the research shows us that humans place high emotional value. And I think this is really important on natural places and experiences for themselves, their families, and for their psychological and physical well-being. Okay, so we can have concepts like place identity, which is a strong sense of attachment to the sea or to a particular sea or place by the water. It can be a river or an inland freshwater as well. And this is a lovely phrase that we can use, is this notion of emotional geographies. So our attachment emotionally, our feelings about places, which I think is really interesting. And then the research itself. Natural England did a really big report in 2011. And they looked at all natural spaces, and they found that visits to the coast were the ones that had the highest level of stress reducing positive emotions. And that was a really big survey. So sorry for anybody who's inland or who likes the forest, but the coast did win in that research. And there was also, there's a lot of work done by the University of Exeter. Stefan, you probably know Matt White and co. They've written a lot of papers on this about visits to the coast. And, you know, if we're interested in tourism here, leisure visits, they came up with a very definitive healthy coast effect, which is related to regular visits to the water for restoration and stress reduction. And you may be familiar with Wallace J. Nichols' book, Blue Mind, which talks about the calming effect of water. Red Mind is probably where a lot of us are at the moment, with a lot of stress and so on. But Blue Mind is a state that affects our brain. So it's neurology and it's physiological as well as psychological. And the evidence is there to prove that. Being in or near water reduces our stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline. It decreases our blood pressure and a lot more besides. So we can say overall that blue space or water improves our well-being in 3 key areas: the physical, the psychological, and the social. And I'll talk more about those in a few minutes. And there is this lovely phrase, and I think it's a lovely thing to read, is this notion of therapeutic landscapes. And therapeutic landscapes are basically natural places that make us feel well. And Will Gessler came up with this concept a couple of decades ago, and he, you know, referred to this idea of places that encompass the physical and psychological aspects of healing. And he spoke about the physical environment, the social environment, and the spiritual environment. His initial research actually was on kind of watery places like Lourdes and so on. But now we use the notion in research for therapeutic landscapes to include a whole range of places. It could be temporary places like holiday destinations, camps for children, or it can be our everyday landscapes of health and well-being, forests, blue spaces, and more. Okay, so therapeutic landscapes is a really nice way to think about how water helps us and how landscapes and nature help us. This is a shameless plug now for my own book that's just literally it's available for pre-order now. It's coming out in April. But this is a book that I've written for the public called Blue Spaces: How and Why Water Can Make You Feel Better. And the first thing it does is captures all the research on water and well-being, what we know so far, in an easy to read, accessible format in one chapter. And personal stories, my own personal story of how water has helped me, and many other people who kindly gave their stories about how water has helped with grief, depression, anxiety, but also joy as well, looking after the oceans and other stories. And then, because I'm also a wellbeing practitioner, there's lots of exercises and practical strategies that you can use in the book. So, you know, those of you who maybe work in wellbeing and so on, there's exercises maybe that you can use from the book that will help you in developing some programs or whatever, or you're welcome to email me afterwards to talk about that. Yeah, so that's that. Second interactive question for you, and I just want to find out, how does well-being feature in your enterprise, your product, your service? If not your product or your service, maybe for your employees or your customers, how does that feature centrally in what you do? And if it doesn't really, then maybe you can comment a little bit about your own well-being and if or how Blue Space helps you. So we'll have a look at that on the chat, please. I'm going to attempt to look at the chat again, Stefan. If I get locked out, I'll be in bother, but let's try. answers in the chat, please. Great. Okay. Good, interesting there, Sally, and Blue Health Coaching. Alistair, I'm not sure what your business is. Lovely. Lauren, I'm not sure what your business is. Connection to the sea, important to your brand. Thanks, Lauren. Seafood restaurant. Camilla Todd. Blue space through paddleboarding and wild swimming. Lovely. Combine it with life coaching. Eco-psychology, Alistair, thanks. Yes, you'll know all of what I'm talking about so far. Well-being in your communications, about people, why people should use the sea. Alice. Yeah. Great. So there's a lovely sense of things coming through there. Sometimes well-being is kind of a backdrop that we talk about rather than something really central, but hopefully by the time we're finished today, it might be something that you consider making a little bit more central in your communication with your clients if it isn't yet. So I just wanted to talk about this notion of nature as a co-agent in our businesses or in our services. So you're all well aware that we can think about the coast as natural heritage and cultural heritage. So we can conceptualize the coast as a natural environment and as a human environment. And I think looking at both of those together are important for what you might do or what you are doing. I'm going to go back and talk about some of these designations and characteristics of the coast in a minute. But I just wanted to say, you know, that the nature and the sea in particular are very much core to our services. Anybody living in Brighton in particular or working in Brighton. And locals and visitors are drawn to this area because of the sea. So some of the research that I did, for example, on families and residents, a huge number of them said we moved here because we wanted to live by the sea, or we wanted our children to grow up by the sea. And then as life would have it, they found they often didn't have time to do much more with it. So that's an opportunity locally to capture that. And again, those of you in accommodation sector and so on, people like to come here because it's by the sea and because it makes us feel well. So I guess we have to think about how do we utilize it, but keep our sustainable values on board, okay? And it is very much, in my opinion, a cooperative and symbiotic relationship that we need to have with blue space. It's not just a taking or a using. And this notion of co-creation of experiences is really important in blue space. I think that we are creating an experience with the water, with each other, with ourselves, with the coast. So it's not just this utilitarian relationship that we're thinking about. So what kind of strategies can we have for promoting nature or blue space in well-being? Well, the key messages, I think, the takeaways of the messages of blue space, nature and well-being are as follows. First of all, and bear this in mind when you're looking at maybe diversifying out a little bit, those of you who aren't already firmly, although I think a lot of you are firmly in the middle of this, which is lovely. But the first key message is that being in or near blue space and nature immersion are essential for good mental, physical, and social well-being. Secondly, green and blue spaces offer us ecosystem services, and some of you will be well familiar with that phrase, but that just basically means the economic, social, and ecological benefits that nature gives to humans. Carbon sequestration, which is basically reducing the bad CO2. And, you know, lovely kelp forests underwater are really good for that as well. It's not just the trees that grow above the ground. And air purity. So these are tangible things you can refer to in your communications. Contact with nature and blue space brings a sense of well-being and promotes an active lifestyle. So the more connected we feel to the coast and to nature, the more we want to get out in it. And that can be cycling, running, walking, or any of those kinetic exercises, experiences that I mentioned a few slides ago. And staying in regular touch with nature and blue space promotes calm and reduces stress. And the final thing that it does is that it can strengthen the cohesion of communities by reducing social isolation. And I know that's certainly true for wild swimming groups and other organizations. So it might be that you're able to set up something that involves some of these characteristics, the physical, the psychological, or the social well-being. You know, can you create a group or something that works like that? This is me just practicing what I preach a little bit, swimming all year, some environmental activism last year with some of my seabird friends there, rock pooling with children, surfing when there's any decent surf to be had, and just really enjoying the coast, you know. And I'm sure you all have things that you do yourselves as well in your own personal lives as well as your businesses. So practical strategies then. I mean, Lynn is going to come into this in a much more professional way with her marketing toolkit, which will include lots of interesting things. But just in general terms, I think we can highlight the importance of blue space and nature for well-being by organizing maybe online or guided tours, nature walks, outdoor activities, education activities, conferences or seminars around these themes, because they're very popular with people. Okay, so some examples of what you can say. Firstly, number one, describe aspects of your service or your business activities that motivate a healthy lifestyle. Just come out and say it. Show the resources that you use or you engage with your service, the sea, food, water. Bring people closer to environmental education to make them understand how it contributes to physical, social, and psychological well-being. So do that for your audience in a way that's appropriate to who your customers are. Fourthly, explain explicitly how people can benefit from your service or product. You know, what's in it for them? And demonstrate how your enterprise contributes to human health and how people can make it part of either their daily lives and or their holiday activity. So those are sort of 5 or 6 tangible things and suggestions, so practical strategies. And the other thing that I feel is kind of, you know, waiting to be used a bit more is a joined up or collaborative approach to get the services or expertise that you might be missing. So for example, in Brighton, we all know there's a huge amount of freelancers and, you know, independent sole traders, people working for themselves. And there's a huge expertise. And I've spoken to Lynn about this before, haven't we, Lynn, that, you know, Brighton, part of the Visit Brighton tourism strategy at the moment, one of them is well-being. And yet we don't have a big spa or, you know, a huge kind of offering for people to come and do that sort of indoor traditional well-being, somewhere like Bath might have, or many of Eastern European cities. But what we do have dripping off every corner is an amazing set of, you know, well-being experts, practitioners. Lots of you are here today. So lots of people doing freelance yoga, well-being, lifestyle entrepreneurs that could offer services, for example, to the accommodation sector or to business and events tourists. So hotels or accommodation or events firms who are wanting to build in blue space or nature activities, you know, I think there's a really good case for developing a forum of some sort for this kind of joined up collaborative approach. If you're going to stay at a seafront hotel, employ a yoga teacher to go and do sunrise yoga on the beach opposite your property, or walk a block down, or whatever it might be. Come and get an environmental expert to come and give a talk to your guests as part of an evening program, or an afternoon offering, or a Saturday morning for children, or whatever it might be. And the same with, again, Brighton is full of people who are really interested in nutrition and physical well-being. Maybe there can be collaborative evenings with accommodation and food sectors. Okay, and then all the tech expertise that we have in the city as well. And all of this happens in blue space. So trying to utilize some of these strategies, I think, with the pot of skills that we have that are often hidden, actually, because, you know, we don't always know each other. I know there's networking events and so on, but maybe a slightly more focused strategy about blue space, well-being and conservation and so on might tie in well with the biosphere values. Lynn and Sarah, maybe. Okay, another interactive question for you, and I'm really interested to hear your views on this. If you haven't, and you're not already, or if you were doing it, let's just say I'm already doing this, but how might you make nature, blue space, well-being more center stage for your enterprise or organization? Might it be through re-examining your marketing materials, thinking about product diversification, looking at new markets or audiences, collaborations that I just mentioned, or some other strategy that you might have? So really interested in your views on this one. And if it is really center stage already, you might want to share how it got to be so. Let's see what's coming up. I feel like I'm on the radio now, calling out the requests. And again, if you're able to say the type of business that you're in, that helps. How would you make blue space, nature, or well-being, or all three of them, more central to your organization? Thank you, Sally. Some good ideas for coaching and branding. Thomas says offering new experiences and workshops, foraging walks, cocktail making, but also storytelling. Lovely, that's really good. Share some Sussex folklore and heritage. Great stories come out after a few whiskies, Thomas. Not that I'd know, of course. And looking at new markets. Yeah, young adults, that's exactly right, Alice, too. There's a really, you know, uncaptured market, I think, in Brighton as well. Everybody thinks young people just come to Brighton to go clubbing, which of course they do, some of them. But there's a good market there, definitely. Reducing plastics, Lauren, seafood, giving back to charity, excellent. And especially coastal charities. I think Carl Evans is here, Leave No Trace Brighton. Amazing work on cleaning up our seafront beaches from plastic waste and fishermen's hooks. Joining forces, combining all your skills, that's really good. Camilla, yeah, and SUP. Exactly, SUP is a really accessible way into the water, I think. Coastal charities. Yeah, I see that, Carl. We can talk about some of that later. So there's some really good ideas there about how we can maybe join forces a little bit. And I think that's something that will work really well moving forward, maybe if you have ideas from here. So just, I'm going to speed through some of this. Can I talk a lot and digress? So you all know our own beautiful Sussex coast, just to, you know, look at old Richard Russell. He's got quite a face there, doesn't he? But it was he who came up with this idea back in 1752 in Brighton about how seawater is good for us, and his lovely enticing title, Disease of the Glands. And basically, you know, came up with the research that showed us that getting into seawater is good for us. He also advocated drinking it, which I really wouldn't promote at the moment. It was probably a bit cleaner in 1752. And our whole coastal heritage, you know, from the pavilion to the dipping machines, the piers, the architectural and social heritage of their structures, what they're used for. Same with our beach huts, our marine and wildlife natural heritage assets, you know, the actual beach itself, the flora, the fauna next to it, in it, under it. And then in the current climate, all of our temporarily paused coastal festivals, paddle around the pier, our seafood, our water sports, wild swimming and more. We have a huge amount to offer here in, over and next to blue space that we really should be proud of. I'm gonna fly through this a little bit so we have time for questions. I've overestimated how long I had, but this is some of my research that I've done on blue spaces. This was a paper in Marine Policy called I Need the Sea and the Sea Needs Me, Symbiotic Coastal Policy Narratives for Human Wellbeing and Sustainability. In summary, that paper just says that instead of having the big talk about we should all save the planet, a way into the conversation is through looking at how good the sea and the coast makes us feel, and therefore it should induce feelings of wanting to look after it. This is family tourism markets beyond a trip to the seaside. So it's more than just a trip to the seaside, exploring the emotions around family tourism experiences. Those are various bits of press that I've done around the coast. Basically, you know, the findings from some of my education research work shows that physical and emotional well-being increases for children, their learning increases, their creativity increases, and they engage with their families more. They want to show and tell and share with their families what they've learned when you bring them to the sea, which has really good vibes for future behaviours and sustainability in the younger generation. The family visits, family tourists in particular, came up with several themes that came out of this. Bonding experiences, so spending time together as a family was important. Water and outdoor experiences, so swimming, paddling, supping. Well-being experiences, so just relaxation. It could be things like yoga as well. Social experiences, connecting with friends, children, swim groups. Fun experiences, games on the beach. It could be paddleboarding, sandcastles. And consumption experiences, so picnics, fish and chips, drinks, seafood, ice cream. So all of these are the kind of building blocks of family tourism motivators. I'll let you read this yourselves later, but the associations we have with the sea in terms of memory, legacy and tradition basically are really important. And we can really build on that in Brighton and Sussex because it is a place that people are used to coming to, but maybe reframing it in a fresher way using our nature, well-being and blue space narratives. I mentioned Ireland here, not that I'm biased. The Wild Atlantic Way has been a huge success story in Ireland. It is basically this map of Ireland where they got all the places along the Atlantic coast from the south all the way up to Northern Ireland, places that weren't really that popular before. And they've come up with this themed route called the Wild Atlantic Way. It sounds really romantic and exciting, doesn't it? Their logo is this little wave, and everywhere, so they've created apps, online ways of connecting things. They've got physical paper maps. They've got signage on the ground. This whole routeway was signed with these symbols here in the middle picture. And then when you get to a spot on the map, there's this steel sculpture that has the name of the spot, the picture, the logo, so you can take a photograph of yourself next to it, which appeals to people, upload it onto Facebook or social media to show your way through it. And I just think that it was a really simple example of a collaboration of small places or small offerings that don't normally get a slice of the tourism pie. And it's completely themed around natural blue space. And you can read more about that online, I'm sure. But I just think it's a brilliant example. And they've got massive sponsorship. Aer Lingus, the national carrier, is a sponsor of the Wild Atlantic Way and all the little tourist boards geographically around that coastline. And it crosses boundaries of jurisdiction and so on. But it is possible. And I think it would be something that would be really nice in our biosphere here, if there was a way to do something around that kind of a coastal theme. And finally, just custodianship, okay? Water makes us feel well, please look after it. That's kind of my message in a nutshell, really. And it's not too big. If it makes me feel well, I can look after it. Therefore, we can all look after it. And we need to mind our blue spaces, you know? And it's a way in that I think that is overlooked quite a lot, is this notion of, you know, if I want to use the sea in my photography, in my marketing principles and so on, then I also then have a responsibility for it. And tourism is the one business that uses resources that it doesn't own: culture, landscape, sea, traditions. So it is part of the tourism industry's big responsibility to look after it. If we're trying to get visitors down here, even if we're just a restaurant, you know, near the sea, we still have a relationship with it. And those are very much the biosphere values, I think. The ladies would agree. And the final slide, what's changed with COVID? Well, we all know there's been a huge surge in nature engagement since lockdown, and a huge surge in wild swimming, blue space interaction. There's a really big pent-up demand for outdoor activities and holidays. Our domestic markets are going to surge. And well-being and recovery will be key aspects of our coastal offerings, not just for tourism, but for our everyday lives. We're all in a heightened state of elongated stress with this pandemic. And research shows us the way that we complete our stress cycle is to get it out of our bodies and our minds. And one of the simplest and easiest and freest ways of doing that is by getting out into nature. Okay. So well-being in nature matters, blue space matters. Blue space is our own therapeutic landscape. So let's understand it, let's use it wisely, and let's look after it. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. If there's any geeks out there, all the further reading is here. Some references for you. And I'm really happy to take some questions now. And sorry for going on so much. I'm going to stop sharing. So thank you. I guess if you have a question, you can unmute. Is that right, Lynn, or a comment, or?
Yeah, if you want to comment in the chat. We have one question already from Alice, which is she's interested to hear what you think about accessing new groups of people who don't use the sea much at all. We have met some groups recently who do not want to get in the sea because of anxiety around safety.
Well, now. Oh yes, Kath Ferguson, where are you? There is a lovely swimming group that I belong to called the Salty Seabirds, and it is a social interest company, and they offer access to the sea courses specifically for people who are worried about getting into the sea, with qualified outdoor swimming coaches and small groups, very held experience, because we realize, that a lot of people are afraid of the sea. I actually had to be resuscitated from a drowning experience in about 15 years ago. So I completely understand the kind of the fear around the sea as well. And it's not a taken for granted assumption that everybody wants to get in it. But there are organizations out there that you can, again, this collaboration notion, let's help each other with some of these ideas. If we put ourselves in touch with what we're able to do and offer, then we can share some of those skills. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Alice. There's Kath Ferguson under Andrew Ferguson. Yeah.
Any more questions? I saw someone with their hand raised and I can't find them again now.
Feel free to just unmute and chat and talk to me if you have a question or a comment. I hope that was useful. I can't tell if that was the right pitch for what you were expecting or not. Thomas?
Yeah, lots of thank you comments, Catherine, so I think it was.
Good. My email is on this presentation anyway, so, and Lynn has a physical copy of it, but I think she will be sharing this around as well, so you can feel free to contact me if you have any other questions specifically. Anyone else? Thanks, Eva.
I'm just going to jump in, Catherine, because I'm not sure if you can see their hands, and I know Alice has got her hand up as well.
No, I can't see any hands at all.
Okay, I just wanted to flag up that we've recently, across the whole coastline of the Biosphere, had the new signage installed for the England Coast Path. So this is going to be a path around the whole of the English coast. They're opening in sections, and it is a UK government thing. But ours have got the signs up, and it is all badged with the Living Coast, which is amazing.
Great.
And I was just wondering if that was an opportunity for some cooperation, a bit like the Wild Atlantic Way. You know, let's just sort of build on what they've done. So just wanted to sort of flag that to everyone as well. Thank you for a lovely talk.
Oh, you're very welcome. I think that's a great opportunity, something that links people together in real space as well as in terms of their services and offerings. I think is and a more formal way of doing it as well. I know there's all these network meetings and stuff that go on, and I come away from those thinking, oh, they're lovely people, and then I kind of don't do anything about it. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, Catherine, Alice had her hand up. So Alice, would you be able to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. I was actually thinking about my thought earlier around kind of working with, like, or rather, I suppose, advertising, marketing to young adults, to this kind of 16 to 25 bracket who aren't, you know, don't really qualify for the children's school kind of level stuff, but also perhaps don't want the kind of family or adult level things either. Has the Biosphere done any thinking around this, how they will be accessing this age group, or just interested really to hear what thinking has happened your end on that, if any?
Well, what's your business again, Alice?
So I work for a wildlife charity as well. Yeah, it's a tricky age group, that one. I'm going to let Lynn or Sarah talk about the Biosphere response to that age group, but I know you were thinking, Lynn, about these kind of micro experiences for that age group of outdoor activities in particular. The thing with the lower end of that age group is they don't have their own money, so their parents need to pay for it. And then the slightly getting into the early 20s, there's definitely an opportunity there for collaborative work on, I think, particularly around sports, you know, and places like the lagoon water sports and some of the people working in stand-up paddling definitely could connect together. I know the electric bikes, that meeting that we were at, Lynn, last year, there was talk of, you know, connecting e-bikes with a paddleboarding experience, with a food and dining that's age appropriate for that group. So I think there's definitely opportunities together for packaging things together for that age group. I don't know if you have anything you want to say on that, Lynn?
Yeah, that age group is actually something, it isn't a target for what we're doing as well through the project. Me and Sarah from the Biosphere are going to be working quite a lot on the Living Coast website. So there is going to be a lot more targeting of different particular target markets, and that is definitely one of them. So not for all of the activities, but definitely for some of them. But then at the same time, we're reliant on the people that put those activities together. So it's not just us that are putting the activities together. So if you do have anything that is suitable, then do let us know. there's quite a lot happening on the project sort of in the final year. So as I said, I've just put my email address in the chat box. So if there is anything that you would, that is kind of suitable, whether it's for that age group or any others, then do definitely get in touch, because we will be promoting it.
Yeah, great. I'm going to put my email in here as well. So my many emails, my many hats. Yeah, any other questions or comments, or are we good with that? No? Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed hearing about some of that, or there's some little nugget of something that was of use to you. It's a big passion of mine, blue space, and I think we're very fortunate to be in this lovely environment, and it would be great if we can share it with others so they can enjoy it and also join us in looking after it properly. That would be really great. Okay, is that us, Lynn?
Yeah, that was absolutely perfect. Thank you so much for doing that for us. And
Pleasure.
if you are interested at all in the project, then do get in touch with me. Catherine's email address is also there if you wanted to get in touch with her direct. But thanks very much for attending.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye now.